Right on. So, welcome again to Late Night with Smitty. I had to steal the computer. My wife was working on report cards. I guess we need to communicate a bit better. But this is good. So, this is on record. That's recorded. So I am joined by Anthony Parker, sports agent based out of Lethbridge, Alberta, home of the Lethbridge Hurricanes and some of the best mini golf that you will experience. Uh,
Yep.
um, I do have some ties to Lethbridge, but people that know me think I have ties everywhere. And so when I first contacted you, Anthony, I saw your post about being a sports agent. Hey, let's talk about it. You got a page going on. I love the CFL exposure. And I thought you were the Anthony Parker that won the Grey Cup for the Calgary Flame or Calgary Stampeders in 2014
Yep.
with Lake King on the field. Um, but anyhow, I still want to do this because I'm very passionate about the CFL and these types of platforms allow us to kind of get the word out. CTV is now going to be doing games. I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really good. So yeah, kind of tell us about Anthony Parker, the person, how you kind of got into the sports agent business, and kind of take it from there.
It's funny. I get that all the time for Anthony Parker, 86, that played for the Stampeders. And it's actually kind of funny because I've talked to him about it too. So him and I have talked, and it's kind of funny how it happens and how it's happened quite a few times. But yeah, so I guess it goes back probably about 8 years. I've been sober for about 8 years, and when I decided to make that change and that life goal and life change and whatnot, and I got clean and sober, I just needed something to do. And my wife said to me, "Why don't you just reach out and try coaching? And you have a story to tell, but you also have a lot of football experience as well." So, I sent out a whole bunch of text messages, emails, and whatnot to teams around Lethbridge. And then Winston Churchill, the head coach, John Dick, reached out to me. And he's like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you come out." So I started coaching for receivers and defensive backs. And that was at a high school level. So obviously no pay, but just for the fun of it.
Right.
And then, from there, I got brought on by the University of Calgary Dinos. Coach Harris reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, we would love to bring you on as a scout and recruiter." So, yeah, I jumped at the opportunity for that. So I spent 3 seasons with the Dinos doing that, going up to spring camp, going up to training camp. Coach Jabari Arthur is one of my really good friends still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a great guy. And then through living in Lethbridge and through just the football network, I guess you could say. Coach Mark Killam and I cross paths, and yeah, he's one of my best friends. We talk all the time, and he said, "Hey, I want you to talk to the director of player personnel at the Stampeders, Brendan Mahoney." So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So Mahoney called me, and then next thing you know, I spend the next 2 seasons working in football operations and player personnel with the Calgary Stampeders. So it was only a training camp role because with the football operations salary cap, unfortunately, it is what it is. I mean, it's great for the players, and it's great to make sure that the money is staying where it needs to stay, and that is the players' pockets.
Right.
Unfortunately, not so good for someone like me who is trying to break into the league. So, I wasn't able to. I did it for a couple seasons and I wasn't able to break that full time barrier because, I mean, whoever wants to leave the Stampeder organization. And then, I got an email from Sean Burke, the GM of the Ottawa Red Blacks. And he said, "Hey, do you have some time to talk?" And this was this past February. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Yeah, no problem. I'd love to." So we had a we had a Zoom interview just like this, and yeah, so things so far are progressing, still in talks. Obviously, in the Canadian Football League, they always hire for the following year. So I'm sitting here and I have nothing to do this year, and I need something, but I also want to learn, right? So Nick Boda, the football operations, he was starting to teach me salary cap, contracts, and all that stuff with the Stampeders, and I loved it. And then I was on LinkedIn one day, and Buddy Walters was on LinkedIn, and he said, "We're looking for new agents, no experience, we'll train, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, "Oh, hey, that would be fun." And I said to my wife, I'm like, "Wouldn't that be kind of a fun job?" And she's like, "That is 100% up your alley." So I'm like, "All right, cool." I'm just going to send him a LinkedIn message, and then had an interview, and boom, I'm hired. So that's how I started in to become an agent, and to be an agent right now is it's literally just knocking on doors, and it's sending text messages, LinkedIn messages, it's sending emails, and you're going to get one yes for every 100 no's, you know what I mean? But it's
Right.
that one yes, that's all it takes. So that is the long-winded story of where I am today.
Nice. Yeah, it's just like anything, right? It's story of perseverance. Even with
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Bowes. I mean, I'd have to go back on that interview.
Mm-hmm.
Her being a children's author, she said that was almost harder to get into because there's a lot of no's
Mm-hmm.
than a female into the sports business. I was like, wow, that's something, right? Like, not everybody
Yep.
that I reach out to for an interview says yes, and that's totally fine. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it does take some time.
Yeah. And going with Lisa Bowes, I mean, this goes back to when I was a kid, so it's kind of dating myself a little bit. But when I'm growing up in Winnipeg, and
Okay.
all you hear on the sports, because she was covering sports in local Winnipeg.
Yes,
And I
she was.
remember Bowes nose because they were playing off with a bow nose from Nike. So that's how I remember Lisa Bowes, is the old Bowes nose from the TV news.
All right, so you're like, okay, so CTV Winnipeg 91 there with Peter Young, Sylvia Kuzak,
Yep.
the whole deal there, right? So
Yep.
okay. Yeah, they had the reunion. I again on social media, you see stuff, you're
Mhm.
like, okay, you kind of put everything together. You're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
that's quite the cast of and I say, characters, like honestly.
Yeah, even
Very
recently
fun.
when Darren Detition unfortunately passed away, and you look back on his career, and you remember, like, I remember that. I remember seeing that when I was a kid. I remember seeing that when I was young, right? So yeah, it's great to see from like those days to where they end up to.
Yeah, it's Porky Plain, Saskatchewan, and yeah, he never forgot his roots. Still loving on the riders, and you know what? You can't fault, like, in
No,
broadcasting business, you cannot fault
no,
somebody for loving their team. Honestly, it's just, it may
100%.
not be the professional thing to do, but at the CFL level in particular, like, I don't care.
Yeah, on my podcast, right? So what I do is every year I do like a team of the year, right? Where that's the team we're going to follow this year. Last year was the BC Lions, and
Mhm.
I just announced, I think it was yesterday, that this year is going to be the Ottawa Red Blacks. So it's kind of fun to just pick a team
Yeah,
that you feel that has something, and then just follow it, and ride it till the wheels fall off, kind of thing, right?
right. Well, exactly, right. You can focus in on some of those guys. So you were on the Ottawa podcast yesterday.
Yeah.
Are you guys high on Drew Brown? There was the Crumb back, Dustin Crumb, which is the Bombers last year. They played on that.
Yep.
Um, I think maybe they overpaid for Drew Brown. After last night, I wouldn't mind him being back in Winnipeg, but that ship has sailed. Uh,
I think they underpaid for Drew Brown, to be honest. Like, I could talk Ottawa all night because I'm that passionate about this roster this year for the Red
yes,
Blacks.
yeah,
And as an agent, I don't have any skin in the game. I don't have a player on that roster. So,
right,
but I mean, they traded for Drew Brown. They brought him in for starting money, but not like high level starting money, right? So
like
it's
400.
yeah. So, like, 400 is still high for Canada, but it's not like Zach Caleros money kind of thing, right? So, they bring in Drew Brown, and, he is QB1. You follow the money trail, and he's number one. There's no doubt about it. Jeremiah Masoli has had a couple rough seasons, and it's unfortunate. I love Jeremiah Masoli. Tyree Adams got hurt last year too, and
Hmm.
Dustin Crum was literally a number four thrown into a number one situation, And, at first it was great, but then I remember it was Calgary. It was Cam Judge who figured it out, and they started using the spy linebacker to, just Judge was just like literally going, from side to side, just watching him. So, once teams figured him out, unfortunately, you could see that, he needs the experience, he needs the work, right? So,
Right.
but, Jeremiah Masoli, I think at best, he could be number 3, but in that more of a mentor role too, right? So yeah, I'd say Brown, Crum, and then I would say probably Masoli.
Yeah. What do you like about Brown's game? I mean, he came in last year when Claris got hurt versus Edmonton. They are calling it kind of the brownout here in Winnipeg. What do you like in particular? Does he have kind of that it factor that's kind of been alluded to with some media outlets here in the Winnipeg area?
I think so. Yeah. But you got to be careful with that, right? Because remember in 2022, Bo Levi Mitchell got hurt, or not really. Well, Bo hasn't been healthy since 2018. Let's be real. But he wasn't playing well, so they benched him and they brought in Jake Mayer, and Jake Mayer lit it up. Well, let's jump ahead to 2023, and Jake Mayer was arguably okay at best,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of people said, oh, well, his receivers were injured, but he makes poor decisions. Jake Mayer makes poor decisions. So when you look at the same scenario where there's, Bo Levi Mitchell sits down and Jake Mayer comes in, you know, Caleros gets hurt, so Drew Brown comes in. There's a big difference there, but you have to be very careful because they could end up the same. You know what I mean?
Right.
Calgary, traded away Bo and they gave the money to Mayer, and then he floundered. So I think that's part of why Ottawa said, yeah, we're going to sign you to starting money, but let's see what you do with it. And not only that, but we're also going to pair you up with a legend in Jeremiah Masoli as well, right? So I think the reason why Drew Brown has it is because he is going to be in a system not only that works, but he's going to have a future Hall of Famer and Jeremiah Masoli in his ear the entire time. They also brought in Dom Rhymes. He's home again.
Yeah.
So, and they've loaded, they went and drafted Nick Martin number 2 overall. So like that receiver core with Braylon Addison and Hardy and Ackles, like this is going to be a receiver group that can't miss, right? So I was talking to Reggie Begelton in Calgary a couple days ago, and he was saying, I asked him, so what happens when you have 2 completely different quarterbacks like Jake Mayer and Matthew Schultz throwing you the ball? He's like, that's not my problem. My problem is I'm going to do my job, and it's their job to get the ball to where it needs to be. I'm not going to sit here and worry about somebody else's job. And I love that mentality. So that's what the Ottawa receivers need to do and I mean, we've seen Dom Rhymes go up, right? There's nobody high points it better except for maybe Keon Hatcher, but he's like 10 feet tall to begin with. So, Dom Rhymes is going for those contested balls and he's coming down with them, no question.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. There's always this thing like, is Ottawa going to take that next step? And I do think that's this year. I don't think Toronto, Montreal is good defensively. Again, still trying to figure out what happened. I was there last night.
Tyson Philpott happened.
Tyson Philpott, what happened? 100%. So, but I really do think and I think, Bob Dice here, I think he is in a position where, there is an opportunity for him to succeed. I'm a huge Bob Dice fan. Again, loved his time here in Winnipeg and that sort of thing, right? So you kind of cheer for these guys, kind of like the Paul Maurice factor with Florida, but
yeah.
So
exactly.
I think that there's a great fan base in Ottawa too.
Very, very, yeah.
So there's something to build off. I think they actually do want it. There's, we've seen this with the Renegades, now it's the Red Blacks. They won that Grey Cup in 2017 with Henry Burris.
Yep.
And then it kind of fell off the cliff. And it's like, well, you kind of want to see Ottawa do strong, nation's capital, right?
Right. Well, the other thing too, right, is, the Rough Riders folded way back in the day. Then they tried to do Rough Riders 2.0 and that didn't last.
Yeah.
And then the whole renegade thing went down with the Red Blacks. The other thing too with the Red Blacks is who was their head coach going into there? That was Coach Campbell out of BC, right? Who is now the assistant GM and head coach. And I honestly think he's probably the only one in the league right now that's doing it properly, is head coach GM role, right? He's the only one that's able to do it successfully, the only one. So, he was there. Burris was there. They had a stacked up lineup. So they're going into their anniversary season this year and they're trying to go back to those roots and they're trying to show this year's roster, this is what it was like, and this is what we did. This is what we can get back to again. Sean Burke is an amazing football mind coming out of Hamilton. He worked for a lot of years with Hamilton. A really good friend of mine as well, Keon Raymond. He speaks super highly of Sean Burke too, right? So, they've got the best guy for the job. And, as the head coach, I know it came down to Bob Dice and Mark Killam, but the thing is they're both special teams guys, right? So you may as well go with the special teams guy that's in the system already. And I understand it, right? Mark Killam will be a head coach in this league somewhere eventually. Mark my words. Everyone watching right now, Mark Killam will be a head coach in the CFL. But Bob Dice is a good dude as well. And like they're so similar, Killam and Dice, with how they operate, how they're a player's coach, how they're a take no nonsense, but will have fun in practice until the fun overtakes the job, right? So they have everything that they need. Their defense looks absolutely incredible. Having, just their defensive line is looking great. The draft that they hit, Dan Okpoko also hit on there. Malden is back again. Wakefield is back again. You know what I mean? But last year, the big question was the secondary. So what do? They have Santos Knox again, but they go out and they get Darius Pickett, right? Santos Knox and Darius Pickett are not rush the quarterback blitz guys. Those are cover guys. So that secondary just 150% better just with those two guys at middle linebacker and the other side. And, with Pickett, he's that hybrid. He's that linebacker DB. So that's what I'm saying is it's going to be fun next week. Unfortunately, again, against Winnipeg, of course, but
yeah, that's what had me kind of worried. I'm like, hey, well, you start 0-0. Okay, now you're 0-1, and now I know Winnipeg's going into this buzzsaw. I'm just going to be honest. And I based on what you've all said, right?
Yep.
Again, and what you've all said is this is a frustrating thing to me. You've informed me about a lot of information that, I watch my television daily and I don't hear a lot of this. And I try to keep in the know as much as possible, but
right. Winnipeg, though, the thing is with Winnipeg is they're not, a lot of people are saying this is do or die year. This is crunch year. No, it is not for me. I don't think so at all. O'Shea is probably the greatest quarterback or a head coach in this generation. No question about it. He's the winningest and best head coach in this generation. You look at the guys that have vacated Winnipeg, look at their ages, look at the guys that are coming in, look at their ages. They're developing guys like Dalton Schoen. They're developing guys like Brady Oliveira. They're developing guys like Nick Dembski, Drew Wolotarski. These guys, like they're bringing these guys into the system and growing them and developing them. Who else is doing that right now, right? So not very many. I haven't seen a group this good since I'd say the John Cornish days in Calgary, where they're bringing in, the Anthony Parkers, the Kenyon Rambos, the John Cornish, you know what I mean? Bringing these guys in, developing them, and making them superstars. Winnipeg's doing that right now, right? Jackson Jeffcoat retired. That's fine. Adam Big Hill's getting a little bit old. I'm not going to lie. He's a smash mouth dude. Yeah. But I think his style of play is reflecting now because he's a smash mouth guy that is not staying healthy. Willie Jefferson, he was on my podcast last year. Love that guy. He is so great to talk to. Nice. But the thing is like I said, Winnipeg, I don't think this is a do or die or this is it season for Winnipeg. Not at all. They're just getting started, in my opinion. They've been humbled down a bit. They won two, coming in on their high horse, knocked out the next two. So this season, I think they just need to get back to basics, and maybe if it's not this year, get ready for next year when the Grey Cup is in Winnipeg.
Yeah, it does seem like a yeah, you've hit on a lot of good points here, Anthony. They do seem to be a bit of a team in transition. You
Yes.
know, the ones that see it kind of from afar, okay, go to the Grey Cup 4 straight years in a row, first team since the Edmonton Eskimos, the Hugh
Mm-hmm.
Campbell era. So there's a coach of the generation, and just
Yep.
you lost 2 Grey Cups by a combination of 5 points, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so it's the thinnest of margins. It comes down to 3 or 4 plays. And you say developing these guys, Dalton Schoen came from Kansas.
Yep.
They had no idea.
Nope.
You bring in a Drew Wolatarski, Canadian talent. Uh,
Yep.
Oliveira is coming into his own. And then there's Johnny Augustine, who's right behind him. And I
Exactly.
am Johnny Augustine.
Yep.
And and yeah, you lost some guys. You got the Ford guy from Green Bay Packers who got cut.
Mm-hmm.
It is this bit of an adjustment. What is a bit of a surprise? Winston Rose is you kind of out of a job.
Yep.
He kind of fell out of favor, but that is sport.
It is, yeah. And the other thing too, so if you look at Johnny Augustine, who is Johnny Augustine? He is Brady Oliveira a few years ago backing up Andrew Harris. You know what I mean? So, and Oliveira is a Winnipeg boy, right? So that's, I believe, so is Nick Dembski too. They're
Yes,
both Winnipeg boys, right?
yeah,
So,
correct.
it's great to see those local guys, right? I represent a player that's on Winnipeg's short list right now of call ups. If something happens at the receiver slash returner point, one of my guys that I represent has been talking with Danny McManus, and I've been talking with Danny McManus. So that's what they're doing is they're going young, they're going hungry, they're going younger and faster, and like you said, it's a transition year. It's not Saskatchewan in a rebuild. It's a small transition. BC is in a reload, not a transition, but a
Yeah,
reload year,
right.
right? Some faces left, some faces came in, but
Lucky
for a
Whitehead
large
left.
part, the core is similar, right? Yeah, Lucky Whitehead's gone, Dom Rhymes is gone, but Standback is in, stuff like that, right? But for the majority, the lineup's the same. Winnipeg, I think Winnipeg lost more big guns than they could have afforded in free agency. But when you're that good, you can't afford to keep everybody, right? So, Houston went to Calgary, and then I can't remember who else they lost on the line. But yeah, like two really big names
Well,
that
yeah, they lost Hardwick to
thank you.
Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
230,000. Uh, Mason's breaking everybody in, trying to like reestablish, these sorts of things and trying to establish a good fan base. I mean, Saskatchewan's going full slate, new radio announcer and everything, and Dave Thomas.
Yeah. AJ Ouellette probably could have gotten more money if he had gone to like BC, for example.
Right.
He could have, or if he could have gotten, more money if he could have rivaled Oliveira, which I don't think Oliveira would have ever left Winnipeg, no matter what, with testing the waters in the NFL. I don't see it happening. Next, after this contract, I can 100% see it happen. But, even guys like AJ Ouellette, they want to be in Saskatchewan. They want to go and see, because Corey Mace is that glue type coach, right? And Mark Mueller, he's a stand-up guy as well. I've worked with Mueller for a couple of years in Calgary. He's a really great guy. So, and then you bring in, small pieces here and there, but you re-sign Sean Bain Jr. That's what you need to do. Joe is a sleeper pick right there, and he is just like a lights out receiver. So wow. It's a great time to be a fan of football in Canada.
Yep, 100%. Because we billet here for the Steinbach Pistons, and I had a former billet. He's from Saskatchewan. He texts me, and it's June 4th. He texts me.
Yeah.
I think the Bombers are going to be in tough this year versus the Bombers. Like, I love hearing that from a 21-year-old kid
Yeah.
who's like who's invested, and the games haven't even started. Like, that's massive, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
saying all this, the excitement, where do you, I ask people this that follow the CFL, where do you see it kind of going in the next 5, 10? Like everybody says they're not reaching that generation. I take my kids to the
They
game.
are.
They love the face paint. They love the bouncy castles. Like it's a full like carnival going
Yeah.
on, right?
So, I mean, so Winnipeg is obviously the exception to the rule, right? They're a publicly owned team
Mhm.
that does incredibly well. So, where I think the things have changed, and I don't care what people say, Commissioner Ambrosi is doing a amazing job as commissioner of this league. What he's been doing to reach more people. So he has a CBS Sports deal. I've heard from some people it's a little bit difficult to find in the States. Fine. So what does he go do? TSN Plus. Then what does he go do? CTV is now carrying, right? So he's making sure that it's broadening. We're having all of these games and Touchdown Atlantic, and yeah, it's all well and good. We're gonna flip the script and we're gonna go Touchdown Pacific, and we're gonna go out to the island this year.
Yeah.
He there was an ownership group that was interested in the Montreal Alouettes before the current ownership group. I cannot pronounce his name, and I do not want to butcher it on TV, so I'm not going to. But there was another ownership group out of Quebec that was interested in buying the Als. So he's talking to them about a Halifax team, right? So he's still on this Halifax thing when city politicians are telling the team to go play in the parking lot. Well, that's ridiculous. And that politician, I hope he doesn't get reelected, because that's not something you say to try to build, try to build your culture and try to build more sport and try to build more tourism in Halifax. Regardless, I digress.
Right.
So where do I see the league in the next couple of years? 100% a 10th team. I could see potentially going up to 12. I think after the next one, they have to do it like the NFL does it in increments of two. They can't just bring one team in, because then you come into this 21, 22 week season for 18 games and
Right.
like 8 bye weeks. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work. So, as much as the 3 bye weeks are fun to watch, they're not fun to watch because then I have to wait extra time to see my teams play. So, yeah, 100% another team. If it's not Halifax, I could easily see Quebec City potentially. I'd like to see Halifax because I'd love to see the game keep going further. Um, the other thing that I love that Ambrosi did was the women in football program. That has, it's breaking barriers and it's knocking down doors. I'm an advocate for women in football, so I partner with my friends out in Football Ontario, Emily Todd and Coach Taylor McIntyre, and everything I can possibly do to help them spread the word and get it done is what I'll do, right? So
Right.
I have like, the Mount Rushmore of like women in football, right? Sonia Rhodey is one of them, Emily Todd, Taylor McIntyre, and then there's Olivia Hoban out of Calgary, right? She was the equipment manager for the Dinos forever, and now she works with the Stampeders. There's of course Tanya Henderson, defensive coach with the BC Lions, right? So that's one thing, but without the steps that we're taking to try to make sure that people are looking at it differently, and that's with Commissioner Ambrosi doing this women in football program, it's helping these women to get the spotlight, to kick down those doors, to break those glass ceilings. And I honestly say, without a shadow of a doubt, there is a home for everybody in our game. So, the other thing that he's doing is he's trying to get more views on people of color in football, right? So there's another partnership that he does that, so that's the kind of stuff that I love to see. That's the kind of stuff that I love that he's doing. So another team for sure, getting more eyes on our game, getting more inclusion in our game. Those are just some of the things that we need to continue to do, but not just at the CFL level, also at the grassroots level too, right? So like I'm not going to name names, or, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I've ran into certain, individuals and organizations that still say 6 man, 9 man, 12 man, and they're not really willing to look at that. Oh, let's have a female coach at the high school level. Let's have, you know what I mean? So it's not, the CFL is where it needs to be. It's that umbrella for Canadian football, but it needs to filter down as well to everybody else.
Yeah. And if you go on my page, I interviewed Keto Pobla who played for the
Mhm.
Bombers in 2011, and he works with Manitoba Selects, and he
Yep.
he didn't say names either, but he alludes to this
Same thing.
same sort of thing.
Yep.
And
Speaking of the Manitoba Select, so I work with what it's called the big time players, right? So it's Keon Raymond. So when he retired from the game, him being American, he brought up 7-on-7, right, to Canada.
right,
And so I work with him, and that's what we're doing as well. Is we're hosting camps clear across Canada from Vancouver to Montreal, and that was
amazing.
yeah. So that's the one thing I said to Keon. I'm like, we have to be co-ed, we have to be inclusive, and we have to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to play football with us. And he's like 100%. So that's what we're doing now. So
Right.
yep.
Yeah, that's big because that's how you grow the game, right? Like when I saw that CTV, they're covering the games. It's like, hey, well, I know people that don't have TSN, and and
Yep.
that's their right. But what are
It's
you gonna do?
expensive.
It is. It adds up over the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's how it is. I mean, in the NFL, you got to have Amazon Prime, you got to have Netflix, you got to have YouTube if you want to watch NFL games.
And the zone.
And the zone. So I'm just so this will allow it, right? Now everybody goes,
Mm-hmm.
well, why was the Banjo Bowl moved to 2 o'clock? Well, it's all for CTV, right? I find it interesting that the Saturday afternoon playoff games will be on CTV and not the Saturday night games. But are they playing Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman? I don't know. So I'm going way back.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah, I just turned 45, so it's all
So
That's
I'm 43.
you're 43, okay.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
I always have this like wow when I find out somebody's age.
Yep.
I would have pegged you to be maybe a bit older, but that's okay. Maybe 46, 47. I always think I'm like 35, but
Yeah.
it's good. All right.
Yeah.
So born in 1981.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Good, good. Quick math.
January of 81.
January of 81. All righty. Good deal. Wow. So, where do we go from there? Yeah, so we've talked about he's talked about Ambrosi, uh
Yep.
what he's doing
Growing the
for the
game.
game. What are your
Yep.
thoughts on this stats thing? This thing wasn't really bothering me, but this whole thing about getting the stats correct is I it just doesn't add up in 2024 when you got things going on.
Well, the CFL has partnered with Pro Football Focus, PFF, and PFF is one of the main stat providers for the NFL and for NCAA college football. So they partnered with PFF last year, and I can see that really taking a jump this year. I've seen if you go on, Teamworks, the one that's for sports jobs, they're posting all the time for data analysts for football because they're carrying this and they want to make sure they're getting their data analytics all done properly
Right.
and in a quick time frame. So that's going to help the CFL because, like I said, PFF has done amazing work at the NFL. So bringing that to Canada is going to be a big thing for all the people that are getting very upset about stats in Canada and whatnot. So
Yeah, I mean, and then there's always also the fantasy football thing going on too.
yes.
People love that. I think I'm going to take a break from fantasy football in the NFL this year. I like I'm going to the Labor Day Classic. They usually have it that weekend, so I have an easy excuse.
I can't. I have to. I am an addict to fantasy football. So, like I said, I'm clean and sober for 8 years. Well, you have to replace an addiction with an addiction. So for
Right.
mine,
Hey,
mine's pop and fantasy football.
hey, nothing wrong with that. I remember like Sunday night there would be like, hey, well, this has to happen, this has to happen. Okay, I win by 2 points or 1 point.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you got a favorite NFL team?
The Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders. So I've been a Raiders fan since 1990. Bo Jackson. You know, growing up wasn't the best type of lifestyle, and I didn't have the best home life. So I came across a book. It was called Bo Knows Bo, and at 9 years old, I read this book, and it's like a game. It's a life changer, right? Like
Mm.
somebody has gone through what I'm going through, kind of thing, right? So ever since then, I've been a diehard Silver and Black Raider Nation, and I always will be.
Nice. That's awesome. As you can see, I'm wearing the Super Bowl shirt here, but the with the
Nobody's perfect. It's okay.
Hey. Well, you got the Christmas Day game. Uh,
Yep.
so and the Raiders are playing their Black Friday.
Yep.
And I'm
And
a
I'm a
Ra-
and I'm a Swifty.
you're yeah. So the kind of tail on that.
Yeah.
My daughter's already asking when Taylor Swift is coming to Winnipeg, because Zach Clarence is good friends with Travis Kelce.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got all this going on. It's like she asked me at the game. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever, right? And but is it people like that? Like even like not that the NFL needs a plug, right? Like
Right.
you don't need this, but this whole Taylor Swift phenomena. Like I was at a game, I was at the Chargers and Chiefs, and I'm hearing in the warm-ups, Taylor Swift's plane's landed. I think she's there, this and that. So you have all this conversation, and we saw this whole like momentum of Taylor Swift going on with the
Yeah.
NFL. We've talked about all these things with the camps and everything else. I guess my point is like my daughter asked me, like, what are the fans going to do if Taylor Swift comes to a game? Like, do we need that type of person to draw other people in, or is it? Am I
Well,
making any sense here?
no,
I'm
100%. No,
rambling.
you 100% are. And it's funny because people are acting like this is the first time a pro athlete has ever dated a celebrity. But I mean, like Carrie Underwood's married to a hockey player. Like,
Officially.
Dion Phaneuf was married to an actress or is married to an actress, right? So, from 20, she was on 24, she was on The Girl Next Door, like, Alicia Cuthbert, great actress. So, people are acting like this is the first time it's ever happened. And of course, obviously, there's more. I don't want to forget anybody, but you know, I think the story started out so publicly that I think it's kind of it's a sweet story, but it's not needed. You know what I mean? Like Travis Kelce came out and said, "Yeah, I tried to reach out to Taylor Swift and I got shot down and she didn't respond, and I have a bracelet." And then finally she did respond, and it's like her song Love Story, but it's real. You know what I mean? So it's kind of cute that how it happened. And it just so happens that Taylor Swift is a female billionaire. So, you know, do I hate it? No, not at all. Because what did I say about Canadian football and bringing more women and girls into the sport? Taylor is doing that now, right? She's not on purpose,
No.
but inadvertently, look at how many more followers did Travis Kelce have on Instagram and Twitter after the news broke that they were an official couple. You know what I mean? So, there's so many, I was at the mall not long ago and I saw an 87 shirt and it said Taylor's boyfriend on it.
Yeah.
So, but for me, have at her. I think it's great. I think that, love is love and they can do their thing on the football side, because that's really what I care about most right now in this conversation. Is it's bringing more eyes on football, it's getting more girls and women, gender minorities, inclusiveness, more eyes on our game, and that's important. So, if the NFL's cameras are going to keep cutting to Taylor Swift up in the box, so be it. I don't care, because the views are going up for the game of football.
Yeah. And I do think that is translating maybe to the CFL to some point. I
Yeah.
know that's my daughter's favorite sport. She told me that about, I think, 2 hours ago as we were
Yeah.
doing here. Like it's just like, okay, right? Like, she likes that excitement, and they don't fully understand, but eventually they will. I mean, that they want to be there.
Yep.
This is good, right? And that's how you captivate that next generation. The fireside chats,
Yep.
Trebler and Stanley Bryant.
Yep.
Again, I'm talking about my daughter here a lot, but she asked
No.
Stanley Bryant, how does it feel to be named after the brand Stanley? The place erupts.
Yeah.
It's not like just, and he kind of chuckles, and then we get a picture with Screbler, and
But look what you just said. Your daughter,
yeah,
so female, is interested in football. So
right.
it's working.
Yes, 100% it is, and
And great parenting from you, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. We did the value lots. We did walk a bit further, but it was a school night, so we had to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Right
Eventually,
on.
eventually, I would love to see a professional women's football where I can start, as an agent representing women to play professional football and get paid for it. That would be fun.
Yep. And you know what? I don't actually think that's out of the realm of possibility at all. I really
No,
don't.
I've
It's
heard
so there.
rumblings. I've heard rumblings. I don't want to say who or where I heard them from
That's
because
fair.
if it is true, I don't want to out the work that they're doing right now. But
Right.
I've heard rumblings of very similar to like the women's NHL to a women's CFL, but a professional league that is going to be paid and everything. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard. Just I'm
Mhm.
crossing my fingers. So,
Well, this is the thing, right? Like it's like with the women's league, when the women's hockey league. Oh, I find out the goaltender. Oh, I went to college with her cousins. She's
yeah,
from Elm Creek. I'm trying to get her on the show. Whatever.
yeah,
It's just like, oh wow, and like there's so much excitement for these ladies, right? But it's the Cheryl Pounders, it's the Granados,
yep.
uh,
And on the football side, Maya Turner, right?
right.
So, the first female to play a CIS game for U Sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
right. And when I hear Brian Dobie's speech in that locker room that day, I really wish I could have gone to that game.
mm-hmm.
And he just says, you know what, she doesn't have it easy like we do. And I am paraphrasing, butchering it here, but
Yeah, no,
it
it's
was
true.
like, oh wow, right? And it's like
Yep,
such unity. And Brian Dobie is a gem. You could
yep.
just, I mean, he's been there forever. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason for it. But he
Oh
he
yeah,
he does well. And but in that speech, it was like, okay, yeah, you know what? It has been a long road
yep.
for her.
And being open minded enough to say, I don't care. She is going to play, and she is going to play well,
Yep. And
and she did.
she did 100% kicks a game-winning field goal and doing her thing, right? And so
Yep,
again, when the younger generation sees these things, it's like, okay, yeah, I
it's
can do that.
possible.
It's possible. Yeah, it's just, again, it going to the female broadcasting, right? The
Yep,
pioneers, right? The Teresa Cruzes.
yep,
These,
yep,
and now it's everywhere. It's,
yep.
Kate Burness and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
So,
And like I mentioned earlier, the Mount Rushmore of women trying to break barriers for football, it's going. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent, right? So, where do you see yourself kind of in the sports agent business in the next 5-10?
So
And
in
you
the
don't have
next
to tell me everything.
the next 5-10, I actually want to be a GM of a team. So that's actually my long-term goal is to actually be a GM in the CFL. So,
Oh,
whether, I would love it to be like in Ottawa with the Red Blacks down the road, but honestly, all 9 teams in Canada, I would go to any of them. It doesn't matter because I love this game and I love our Canadian game so much.
yeah,
Until then, though, I want to keep finding good, talented players that are hungry, that want to, that are willing to do whatever it takes. Whether anybody who wants to sign with me to be their agent, it's not an easy process, right? I get the film and I watch the film and I analyze the film and then I go down the rabbit hole and I'm Googling them and I'm looking up their college stats, but then I'm looking for anything that may pop up, right? Like, we all know what happened with Kadeem Carey when he was at Arizona and he had some legal issues back then. So, and I know Kadeem and he's talked to me all about it, which is why I kind of do it now, right? Because he's the
right.
one who actually told me, you know. So I do that kind of stuff. And, it could be something small, it could be something big. It's not going to stop you. If you did something stupid in college, it's not going to stop me from signing you as a client. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But I do my due diligence and I go through everything, right? And then, if I don't like what I see on film, I don't like what I see on stats, then, I just go to the next person and continue the process. I find someone I do like, then I text them and I say, hey, this is me, this is from Pro Level Sports Agency, are you still looking for representation? And then we text a bit, we do a Zoom call, And then, we start talking about what it's going to take for me to represent them. And, I want to make sure that, they're willing to put the work in, right? So there's this like negative stigma on indoor and arena football. That is an exciting game, and it's fun and it's fast paced. It's the only American game next to NCAA that has the waggle. So, you know what I mean? So it's a good prep. Guys like Keon Raymond and Manny Arsenault and Derek Dennis have all come from the indoor and arena leagues, right?
Or Kurt
Keon,
Warner.
yeah, exactly, right. I don't say Kurt Warner because he's the obvious, right? Everyone's seen the movie.
Yeah.
So, I talk about the Canadian players that came from the States, but came through those programs. Like, Derek Dennis talked to me a lot about it. So, I make sure, like, are you willing to go play indoor and arena ball? Because when I talk to guys about representation, what I tell them is that I say, you graduated college, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, what did you take? And they'll tell me. I'm like, great. So when you graduated and you got that piece of paper, did you get the highest paying job out of college? No, because as nice as that fancy piece of paper is, they want to see the experience that goes along with that fancy piece of paper.
That's right.
Football is the exact same way. No matter what, you still need that experience, right?
Right.
Caleb Williams gets drafted #1 overall by the Chicago Bears. Do you think he was allowed to skip minicamp? Heck no. He had to show up to every organized camp that there is, right? So, and that's because he's a rookie and he's unproven. Same thing with these guys, right? I like representing the guys that come from other schools that don't have eyes on them because they're hungrier and they want it more. So that's what I do. And then, after we decide that, yeah, we're a good fit for each other, then off we go. And I tell them, I send them a text and say, here's all the UFL tryouts coming out this summer. Go to one. Here's all of, I find out where do you live and where, like, I look at where they live and like close proximity and say, okay, the Saskatchewan Roughriders have a tryout over here, go. Or the BC Lions have one here, go. You know what I mean? So I make sure that they're willing to put in the work. And then I'm contacting IFL teams. I'm contacting CFL because I know actually I think I do know every GM in this league with the exception of Jeremy O'Day is probably the only one that I haven't talked to, but I've talked to the assistant general manager Kyle there a couple of times. So, I haven't talked to O'Day, but I've talked to somebody in the organization. So, and I'm doing that and I'm saying, I have a list. I always ask my American players, do you have a passport? No. Okay. Well, you go to the bottom of the list because you can't get into Canada. So that sucks. So when I go to the Canadian teams, I'm like, here's my list of guys. Here's the positions. Here's their film, blah, 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 blah. Right. So, like I said earlier, Chandler Baker, he's a receiver out of Buffalo. He is on Danny McManus's short list for getting a call up if things go sideways in Winnipeg. So, that kind of stuff. It's building those relationships and it's making sure that, the guys understand that it's not an easy process. And, you watch Hard Knocks, but how long it takes to get to Hard Knocks. So
it's very true. It's a big journey, right?
yeah.
We always see the final product, whether it's CFL or NFL, but it is that journey to get there. I mean, I go back to Dalton Schoen. He didn't even know the Canadian game until, he basically showed up here, right? And he
and
learned very well.
I was lucky too, is because I always say like I have a friend, but it's true. I'm not being an arrogant or conceited or anything. I'm just saying in my years of doing this, I've built a lot of relationships because football is relationship building. Chris Lamberis, he is Dulcito Sports. He's an agent. He is CFLPA certified, NFLPA certified. The man is a genius and he's Canadian. And he represents UFC fighters. He represents everybody. And how you always hear that, every shrink has a shrink. Well, I go to Chris and Chris is my guy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You speak that you just said all those descriptions of him and his titles. I can't help but think, but Thomas Dimitrov, general manager for the Atlanta Falcons, right?
Yep, exactly. Vince Magri. Vince Magri, he was the assistant general man. So Vince started as the video guy for the Argos. Then he became the assistant general manager to Pinball Clemens. Now he just got hired with the Buffalo Bills. So we're seeing more of those Canadian guys filtering into the NFL, not only on the field, which is amazing. We saw someone be drafted out of a Canadian university this year. So, Manu got drafted out of UBC going to Detroit. Amazing. But we're seeing that more with CFL front office guys are now getting shots in the NFL.
Right. Yeah, there's not this like huge wall. I'm not going to name the wall. There's not this huge wall. It's like, hey, that wall has been broken. It's been broken for a while.
Yep.
You go, case in point, I go to a Chiefs game and they're just like everybody else. They're offering food. They're friendly as all can be, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going into this. So it's so fragile. I can't touch it. I can't taste it anymore.
Yeah.
And now you can taste these things.
Yeah.
These things that we've said.
John Hufnagel and his son Cole, right? They came from the NFL. John spent years. He worked for the Giants. He worked for the Patriots. Yes. You know what I mean? Cole, he worked for the Jets. So, and now, of course, Huff has stepped down, but Cole is still the director of U.S. scouting for the Stampeders. But, they're coming, those guys are coming up from the NFL into Canada. So now, it's putting a little bit more eyes on the Canadian game from the Americans, right? They're like, oh, hey, Huff went up to Canada and look at the career he had.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And we saw that with Ken Austin too, right? He got to be the offensive
Auburn.
In Auburn, right? So
and and that's a testament to what Ambrosie's doing too, right? With the CBS Sports deal, getting more eyes on our Canadian game down in the US.
I still wish it was on ESPN, but if you can get it on CBS, I mean, that's good too. But CFL Plus, I mean, that's a good thing as well. I'm out.
They still black out though. CFL Plus still blacks out, and I'm really upset about that because I wanted to watch the Red Blacks last preseason game, and it was blacked out in Alberta, and I was mad.
Oh, shoot. Maybe it'll have to go into the zone or something.
Yeah, but I mean, it's got to start somewhere, right? CBS Sports is the beginning, right? Is it gonna, can we eventually get to ESPN? Of course we could. Well, the CFL game was only covered on CBC at one time.
Right.
So, yeah.
And when you talk about ESPN, I always thought about the biggest advocate, the only person ever talking about the CFL in the US was our Chris Berman, right? He would do the CFL highlights. He did a thing with Milt Stegall.
Yep.
I remember I was in the press conference. He was talking. This is 2008. He's talking about that playoff game between Montreal and Winnipeg. And why Montreal went for it, and he's talking about how him and Bill Parcells, and the guys were talking about why Montreal went for it. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I'm like, he's the only guy giving us a voice.
Yep.
But I think this is turned.
Yeah.
It's Chris Trebler being in the NFL with Arizona. Jim Nantz is talking about he won the Grey Cup with the Bombers, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit back here.
You got Pat McAfee talking about the CFL. You got Tom Brady saying, if I want to be the true legend, I need to go up to Canada to go win a Grey Cup so I can win all the championships. Right. We've got, it's insane, what we're seeing. We have Joe Burrow wearing an Alouettes jersey. His
dad played for
because his dad, but still, he's going to a Bengals game and he's dressed in an Alouettes jersey. So like you're seeing more CFL type materials showing up in the NFL now, and it's fantastic, right? So I'm a big Pat McAfee fan. Mm-hmm. So seeing that is it's great.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So I based on what we've talked about here in the last hour, I think the future is bright.
I hope so. The one thing, if I could build on what I'm doing right now, is I would love to get more Canadians to sign. I want to sign more Canadians to my as an agent, because right now I because the agency, it's called Pro Level Sports Agency. It's based out of Pennsylvania. It's Buddy is he's an amazing guy. He's very knowledgeable. He worked in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for a while. He's worked in the NFL for a while. He's very knowledgeable, but I'm only representing American players right now, and I want to be representing Canadian guys because if you look at the best hockey players in the world, they're Canadian. So why can't the best football players in the world be Canadian too? So we need more eyes on Canadian college football. So it's not quite to where the NCAA is, and we need it to be. U Sport it's good, but it's nowhere near what it needs to be. So and that's what I want to do as an agent is I want to start highlighting these Canadian kids and saying, hey, this is real football.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have the Israel Adonijah story, right?
Yeah.
Chase Claypool. I really hope it works for him.
Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
Right. Coming out of Sherwood Park, Alberta.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think there are baby steps here that's gonna build into something. Honestly, through social media, everything else, people getting exposure just like yourself.
And that's all it takes, right? Like people ask me a lot, how did you get to where you are now? And by no means am I like, I'm not, 86, but I've worked my ladder up to get to where I am today. And it all started with, sending out emails to like everybody I could possibly talk to LinkedIn messages. I was talking, Jim Barker said on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, that he gets a lot of emails or text messages saying, how do you break into the league? And I flat out said on my podcast, I was one of them.
Yeah.
I reached out to Coach Barker, 2.5 years ago saying, what do I do? Right. And here I am. So it's all it takes is just don't be scared to hear no, and just be willing to do the not so glamorous jobs in football to get to where you want to be. Everyone's got to start somewhere, right?
That's exactly it.
If you want to be the CEO of a company, start as a janitor and work your way up, kind of thing. So
that's exactly it. Yeah, get that foot in the door and go from there. So that's good. Well, Anthony, this has been awesome. This has been great. I try to keep them about an hour.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm long-winded, so it's all good.
That's all good. Zoom has only cut out on me once, and Facebook Live, that's always when I did a Facebook Live 2 days ago and it cut out on me. That's never happened before. We're good to go here. So this is
right.
Any final thoughts?
Thank you for having me on tonight. Thank you for talking football. I love talking football. I love talking Canadian football. I love talking to passionate people about it. Obviously you are. So, I mean, that's what I love. And, I love your down to earth, relaxed, like, hey, let's just sit down and talk like we're out in front of a campfire. You know what I mean? So I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And as I say to everybody, I'll have you on again sometime if you like.
100%. Yep. I'll be here.
Okay. Awesome. Enjoy your weekend and then take care. God bless.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah.